Good morning. So very nice to be here. It's been really nice. We were just saying, actually, with real people in the real world, meeting and greeting and talking about all this good stuff. So we're going to talk about Camila Cabello. We're going to talk about XR, virtual production. We're going to talk about the challenges with producing a live concert for TikTok using XR. But we're also going to talk a little bit about how this technology kind of first came into being, the trials and tribulations, a lot of it coming from live. It was really interesting hearing Phil and just a lot of this stuff with the timing and the technologies and all of the real challenges, the technical challenges that we're now seeing embedded into Unreal and the engines have sort of come from a lot of this space. We're going to deep dive into that a bit, and then we're going to talk about Camila Cabello's concert, and then end with a little bit on just where we see some of this going, where the future of live is going, and what we're getting excited about. Hello, I'm Alex Wills, Chief Experience Officer at Disguise, and looking forward to talking more about all this in a minute.
Perfect. I'm JT Rooney. I'm the president of XR Studios and a longtime partner and user with Disguise. So it's a very fruitful conversation for all of us as we've all had a lot of crossover together over the years. The session, like Alex said, we're going to look at what we are. Another partner involved in this, named Sign the Partners, who created the actual visual virtual art assets for this presentation for Camila Cabello and Disguise. A little bit about where this all comes from and a couple of deep dives coming up. So this is kind of coming down the pipe. Something that has started with all of this is the actual sort of history of live entertainment. If you can show the next one, is this is a still from United Visual Artists, and UVA is a company that started something called D3, which eventually became Disguise. And so there's this long lineage of like art and design and installation and live experiential work that has kind of grown a lot of this industry when it's come from the live entertainment side of things. And here's a little bit just to show what XR Studios does. All right. Well, that's a selection of things that have happened with us over at Extra Studios over the last couple of years. There's a lot of stuff in there, including work run on Disguise servers, a lot of it with Unreal Engine, a lot of it with other partners who are here today, including Moment Factory and Silent Partner Studio and Impossible Objects and lots of other friends who are here. We are a physical studio and a service production studio in Los Angeles. We have a studio in Hollywood, and we are building a new location in Hollywood that will open in 2023, which is very exciting. It's in the original Eastman Kodak headquarters, so it's a lot of fun, lots of history there, and there'll be a large volume like the one you see here and a much smaller one as well for more flexible space. Our company and our vision is to help creatives and to help people achieve their vision and their journey, and we'll talk about that a lot today. There's a lot of technical backbone to look at and workflows to understand, but the end goal is to make something cool happen, like Kid Cudi flying through space, or there's other images from Post Malone doing an album launch for Amazon Prime. So all of this sort of technology is just there to support that end vision. XR, or what we call XR, it's this very umbrella term, and it's like very knowingly vague, and we all acknowledge that. And I think that's on purpose because we know it's going to change a lot. It already has changed a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. It's changing every week, and who knows in 5 years from now what we'll be using and what we'll be doing. So it's an umbrella term for immersive technologies that blend live and virtual, and that's a very important key cornerstone for what XR Studios does, and I think a lot of what the Disguise team and other people involved in this world are doing, which is combining live, real, organic human beings with the virtual environment, and it's really important. This is a still from that Billie Eilish concert, that Moment Factory. We'll talk about it a bit later, but they had an amazing tour all set up before COVID. Weren't able to do it, so they were able to envision it with us on an XR stage during COVID to create something that was actually new and different, which is really interesting. It combines a lot of elements of mixed reality and augmented reality together. So there's AR elements, there's LED elements. It's a little bit different than just in-camera VFX. It's also really useful for other things like this J Balvin performance, which is then put into the metaverse. So it was a performance that was filmed on an LED stage with AR elements, musical elements, and then put into a virtual screen inside of Fortnite for people to watch. So there's lots of sort of layers and tangents here. I want to take a moment to talk about Silent Partners Studio. They are a content and visual design studio based actually in Montreal. That's a big part of my history. I used to come from that company as well, in the LA office. And so they've been a very close partner and friend with XR Studios over time. And they helped develop the visuals in this Camila Cabello piece we're talking about today. But it's worth talking a little bit about their history because I think it's important. So they've done a lot of in-person events. You just saw the thing before was from the VMAs. They've done a lot of AR and virtual graphics there, but lots of in-person things, including on the top left image is an event called PY1, which was a pyramid sort of projection show back in 2018, 2019, which was actually using Unreal quite heavily at the time and pushed a lot of the development towards, end display and all these sort of real-time tools of how do you get Unreal Engine at 16K resolution in real time and make it work. And there's a lot to talk about with that. So they're a great part of this, and they're a big sort of function on the design side, but a lot of it also comes back to the roots, like I was saying earlier, from Disguise and the history there. If you want to talk about that a little bit, Alex.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Disguise have been going for about 15, 20 years and was born out of live music and live entertainment. And we basically create a hardware and software solution that powers these next generations of live and increasingly sort of advanced productions, from virtual productions all the way to location-based experiences as well. And as JT said, a lot of it was born from content, art, and technology working closely together. And one of our founders, Ash, was sort of a programmer, but worked hand in glove with the artist, whether it be U2, whether it be Massive Attack, to kind of put these things together and do things that hadn't been done before, with putting pixels in increasingly complex places, spaces, and sort of then extending them out and pushing that platform, but always sort of project-based innovation and really kind of innovating kind of on the fly for these live events. And live being the kind of like the cornerstone of the business, but as we were saying earlier, live just gives an unbelievable kind of battled, hardened ability to kind of span across all these different verticals. So live, we're absolutely, so pleased that live's come back. Everyone's out touring. It couldn't be more excited, and people like going back into the real world, which is kind of nice. But also increasingly what's happening is, and we're seeing it here with this convergence and at UE Fest, is the same technologies are now, able to deliver incredible experiences and the latest advanced production facilities across different industry verticals. And it's the same connective tissue, whether it be massive video playback, native Unreal, or a combination of the two. Increasingly, we're seeing this kind of on the platform, and the take-up's really interesting. Same for broadcast. It's really interesting for those who are in Phil's talk. That's a lot of people are kind of from these different areas, and there is this really exciting convergence, but a total need for specific people, specific ways of working, specific hard and soft skills to really sort of thrive in these industries and make sure that they're perfectly served. But underpinning all of that is a real consistent sort of hardware and software basis we're seeing, which is great. And then the final vertical, which is super exciting, again, got really COVIDed, and it's great seeing people back in the real world enjoying these amazingly immersive experiences. And again, the platform delivers, the same experience. And, as JD said, we've enjoyed a great partnership with XR Studios for a long time. And really sort of this stack is kind of sort of sums it up. It's like, the core underlying platform, then an amazing partner to bring it to life. I think some people underestimate, we were sort of talking, I think it's sort of 50 core staff and then 200 scaling up people on set to deliver some of these things. It's a massive operation. And so partnering with that and having the technology stack just work with the engine, with the content creators, and, absolutely in collaboration with the artists is kind of how we're sort of seeing it and how we've sort of seen it deliver.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of this talk and festival has been about for everyone, is like, what is the technology stack? What are all the different tools that are involved? And that's something we want to talk about today, is this all comes from a history of media server playback and video playback, which is in 5.1 very exciting coming out for Unreal, but it's something that there's a long history there in a lot of different worlds. So there's a lot of different use cases for all this stuff. We wanted to talk about a case study specifically, which is a little bit selfish, but it's like my own personal journey with XR and AR and live real-time rendering in general, because it exists to solve a problem a lot of times. Unreal and anything that is working in the real-time space is a tool, and you should use it for those reasons. But you should make a very conscious choice as to whether you are running something real time or not. Like, there should be reasons for this. And so just wanted to talk a little bit about one of the reasons. So for me, that was on Katy Perry's Super Bowl, the left shark, really infamous one. Which was pretty planned. But we in the Super Bowl, I don't know if you remember it. Everyone only remembers Left Shark, but it was this huge projection floor across the field. There were 82 projectors, and it was wild. Here's a screenshot from inside Disguise Designer. One thing that's really interesting about Disguise is that it has live real-time previs, so you can see in 3D space. It's something that really put them on the map, and something we're all used to now and using Unreal all the time. But in 2011 or 2010, when that was happening, was a really big deal. So the problem with the show is that we wanted to do perspective corrected content. We wanted to, make an anamorphic illusion like a sidewalk chalk painting that only looks right from one angle. We wanted it to look like that in the broadcast to add some depth. So inside of Disguise, you can see here, like, it looks correct. You can see a checkerboard chess thing. You can see these cubes moving up and down. But if you go to the next frame, you can see that inside of inside of a Cinema 4D, actually, is what that still frame is from. We had to we had to create it knowing that perspective. So it was this really long journey where we knew that we wanted this sort of really depth perspective thing. We knew as broadcasters, we knew you could choose a camera. That had been done before. This isn't anything necessarily that new, but on this scale is really interesting, and especially in a halftime show that you load in 6 minutes or whatever it is. Um, there's a quote from Ben Nicholson, who was working with Lightborn at the time, which is a content company that made the visuals, where I was working at the time as well. And in Disguise, we plotted the hero camera position for the perspective mapping over a month ahead of time, based on a CAD model of the stadium, NBC's camera plot, and detailed location scout photos. So again, knowing now that we're in real time, imagining back 10 years ago, where it was like a commitment had to be made on the exact millimeter and placement and all this sort of stuff with the camera. However, if you go to the next one, that's what it looks like in the end product. Was, you can see that, it's all perspective, but it was pre-rendered. There was an adventure that we went down for a couple days, which was kind of, again, planting that seed for me and a lot of the team at Disguise, which was, well, what if? What if we could track this? What if we could do some other choices? And we went down a very silly path of pre-rendering shots based off of camera previs. And when we cut cameras, we'd cut to a different angle and perspective. And we spent 2 or 3 days on a pretty wild adventure of trying to align steady cam positions and like all sorts of stuff. It just wasn't quite there yet. Real-time rendering wasn't quite there. UE4 was about 9 months old at the time. We loaded it up. We were trying to do all this sort of stuff. It's need a little bit more time. But it's a really interesting thing of, like, again, rooting something in live entertainment and live shows with that pressure point that we've been talking about, with that sort of experience, really planted a seed for a lot of people that says, well, what if we can turn this into something and create a path? So this guy started to play with camera inputs in a different perspective. They started playing with planning, all these things, and it's really evolved into what we call extended reality. The next one to talk about is, ironically, with Katy Perry as well. And that wasn't really planned, but it just has been someone who has been supporting technology and has been trusting, and that's a big thing in this industry. Is if you have someone who says, like, yeah, sure, give it a shot, it really allows you to grow. So this is a shot from a stage in Glendale, California, actually at the PRG stage, where they had built a stage with me and the team at Silent Partners and Sound House and a bunch of other people to test out this as a thing, and it was sort of the birth of XR Studios as a solution. It's worth talking a bit about this piece because XR, again, and AR and MR is not necessarily that new. We've talked about that a lot in this conference so far with other people. Sports has been doing this for a very, very long time. It's just very interesting to use it in a creative way. So while this was happening, sharing notes with Phil from Lux and other people, and, like, the film world is doing this, well, live entertainment was, exploring in a different way. One of those different ways, which is very rooted in the core of the Disguise workflow, is that a lot of these stages are using LED floors. And this is very different. We like to say that our stage in Hollywood looks like it's been flipped upside down because it doesn't have a ceiling, but it has a floor. Um, It's a decision based off of time. If you're doing a musical performance and you have to change through 20 sets in real time, you can't load on a physical set. You have to use another solution. And so this is a very interesting sort of thing that occurred, is that using the LED floor. So on the next one, you can see that it sort of evolves to create this whole space underneath Katie and create this whole environment, which is really, really interesting. And yeah, it's really just the key starting point on a lot of the stuff for this relationship and for that specific use case in the live industry. It's also a moment in May of 2020 when the technology wasn't ready, in the middle of COVID, and very pregnant pop star who just wanted to get out of there as quick as she could. So like, it's a very interesting, way to try to push something, but that's when the best stuff happens.
Yeah, and with these new innovations, it wasn't all plain sailing, and it wasn't straightforward because this was the first time it had been done on a grand scale, and kind of that's how it looks like in terms of the breakdown and showing the virtual set extensions. And this is stuff that is kind of evolved now and is sort of being standardized, and the color workflows are there, and all of these things are getting more baked in and understood. But back then, this was kind of all brand new. The nicest thing is, like, all of these technologies now are being kind of put into the main branch of the software to sort of underpin all of the different verticals and all of the different areas that we're pushing in on. But this is what was happening: just doing the color correction live, doing the sort of extension and having it work live with then the AR elements working out of the box was one of the biggest challenges. And just a quick diagram for those who don't know sort of the Disguise setup. This is kind of how we break it down. At the time, this is we decouple the rendering. We sort of have the rendering nodes separated so we can just, well, kind of infinitely scale depending on price, but we can sort of scale up to any size volume. This was not the diagram that supported that, but you kind of see the structure of this and how we kind of utilize this to sort of really maximize the performance, put the AR onto the media server itself, so it's kind of all done through one piece of software. And then, as JT said, the visualization is kind of something that's been through Disguise through and through, which is like you can visualize this final pixels. It's not a nice, cute visualization that then you have to do again or do in production. It's like the visualizer is the final production workflow. And again, because it's rooted in live, it's like it's got to work, quickly. It's got to, time is really of the essence, and that's why this whole infrastructure has kind of been built and scaling really nicely across newer projects.
I think, yeah, once that kind of took off from that Katy Perry project and other projects, again, it was this beautiful moment where the film world was working on one thing, and the great test that Lux and Epic did with the motorcycle that got really famous was like around the same time when this is all happening. So this beautiful moment of everyone working in different spaces, and then COVID hit, and we all just smashed onto each other between games and live entertainment, broadcast, touring, film, commercial. What say you? So to kind of quickly move through the rest, but that led into an evolution of a bunch of other things. That Billie Eilish show with Moment Factor that we spoke about earlier was a really great use case of it. A full 1 hour live stream with with 14 different environments, jumping between different scenes live in real time on a true broadcast is a big deal. And taking elements like this that the team wanted to do in the live show, but all of a sudden doing it in a virtual space, they could make something 80 feet tall as opposed to a prop or as opposed to content on screen. So it turned it into something very different. Another thing that was very different was the 2020 MTV VMA Awards, which was about 80% of that show was done on our stage in a very, very big step. So taking it from a bit of a test and taking it from a 2 or 3 or 4 camera shoot to all of a sudden a 9 camera shoot, 350 person crew, like just the VMAs is an enormous show in the first place. So running it through the paces in an XR environment in 2020 was crazy, but it was amazing. It really helped push the technology forward and made it now it's a professional tool. Now RXs could be developed and all this sort of stuff in the Disguise ecosystem. And then yeah, another still from that was with Lady Gaga as well. So we had a lot of different artists, lots of different creative teams, and it's really important is to be able to put it through its paces. Another evolution of that is there's another talk that just happened about the world of esports. So then pushing it out into that world as well. AR again has been around, but connecting it to LED floor, keeping it in this sort of overall ecosystem with Disguise has been a big part of this. So to jump right into it, we're talking specifically about a project that was with Camila Cabello, and I think the interesting thing about it is that she wanted a new way to launch her new album, and TikTok wanted a new way to showcase an artist, and everyone wanted to find some way to, explore the idea of an artist releasing something without it just being like a selfie video while the music is playing. And it's a fair thing to try to figure out. There's a lot of production value that happens on TikTok nowadays, but they wanted to kind of really amp it up. And so this created a lot of challenges. So we had to get a lot of partners involved. And so the sort of overview a bit was Camilla and her team, of course, creatively. There's a lot involved. There's a lot of really great artists there. Her director at the moment and for this project was a woman named Charlotte Rutherford, who was incredible. The team at TikTok was very involved. Silent Partners Studio, which is the S there, they did, again, the virtual assets made in Unreal Engine and a couple other things. XR Studios was the overall technical production company and the location. We oversaw the integration of everything in the camera team and just making it all work. Unreal Engine was, of course, used as the majority of the visuals on the show and as a partner to be able to call to and help make something crazy happen. And then Disguise is in the middle of all of that, kind of making the whole tech stack work. A show like this is really interesting because it follows the normal pipeline of creative development. So there's storyboards, there's planning, there's design frames and sketches and all those sort of things that you still need to do that when you're working in real time, and maybe even more so. Other talks like from the great folks over at Pixamondo yesterday were talking about the need for planning and like the whole pipeline, like that still exists even in live entertainment, especially. There's another really interesting part for this. There's a huge consideration from a technical standpoint, which is we were shooting in 916. So we have a guide here from TikTok, which is terrifying. That purple area is the only area you're really supposed to see something, and that's not a lot to tell a story, to do anything visual, to technically work with that with lenses, with camera teams, all the stuff like that. And so um, the comment zone below is actually, if you TikTok, the comments pop up and just constantly scroll through the whole time. So there's alpha there, you can see through it, but there's still a lot going on. So there's a lot of considerations from the very beginning, and you can see that in this next one as well. So there's a song called Bam Bam. I'll go through a bunch of these songs and talk about the environments, but you can see on a close-up shot there's a lot to think about. So this is an environment that was decided to be this sort of fun nature environment, really leaning into Unreal tools and Megascan assets, and how do we make something rich and vibrant and also allow 30 people on stage and her grandma to dance with her and stuff like that. um, so here's a little fly through, and I'll talk about that while that's going in the background. But you know it's very interesting when you design anything in an environmental standpoint, which is something that is very familiar for a lot of people here who are working in in-camera VFX. And it's something that from the live touring world is something we're very comfortable with, which is the environment in Unreal here is not really telling the story. It's a location for the story to occur. So it doesn't have to be the flashiest thing in the world. It doesn't have to have movement and activation and stuff like that. It just has to be interesting. And there's a whole conversation about photorealism and believability to talk about. But for this shoot, there was a lot of suspension of disbelief. It's okay that it's maybe not the most real thing ever, but it has a feeling. It's warm, it's vibrant. There's little TikTok logos hidden in the arches and stuff like that. Like there's reasons why these things are designed the way they are. And working with silent partners again who made these sort of scenes, this is showing the Unreal Engine template that we use at XR Studios. So we have a template based workflow where we send people a file and we work on our perforce together and we get everyone in sync. But it has the actual cameras in the scene with the right millimeter and the lens choices and all sort of stuff like that. It shows the stage, it shows the limitations. All of a sudden the content and the design team becomes the staging team and the choreography team, and like, hey, how many people can I fit on stage, and hey, what about the size of this prop? So it really changes the sort of like weight of a scene, which is really interesting. Another piece for the live stream was a song called Quiet, and this represents a really interesting problem, or an opportunity to solve a problem, I guess, which is that this great workflow that we've all created together with virtual set extension and AR is that you can see in some of the videos, but we're extending past the edge of the LED screen with augmented reality, so it just kind of disappears into space, and you can extend the world, infinitely, which is really interesting. However, that means that objects sort of disappear at some point once they leave the stage. So a real physical object like the swing that we added for Camilla, the tops of the swing would just disappear because it was connected to the rig, and it would just like all of a sudden fade away. So the content team made a really clever choice, which is just slap a cloud on the top of it. And solutions like that in AR on top of the stack is a really great, clever thing that creatively actually worked and served the purpose and told the story, but also saved a lot of headache for a lot of people trying to figure that out. Um, it's interesting the problems that people have to solve nowadays. But this is a little playthrough of the scene itself. So this is how it looks natively in Unreal. Again, there's another giant TikTok logo on the side. Trying to find ways the team was, how do you keep it branded, keep it interesting, but also, not be too over the top about it. But um, yeah, Unreal is incredible, and you can do a lot of time of day features here. Lots of simulations with the sand moving about, little details here that just provide to the overall story, which is interesting. The next scene we're talking about is called La Buena Vida, and this was how she opened the actual performance. A really interesting use case here that is familiar to the folks learning about in-camera VFX, but for us as well, is that it's using physical props and objects. So couches and chairs and furniture and stuff like that. Choosing what is real and what is virtual is a really interesting conversation. There's also an interesting conversation which we were talking about earlier, which is photorealism. When you're doing a live shoot and the whole production cycle of this project is only 4 to 6 weeks. It's not months, it's not a year, it's not ages. So you're not going to achieve photorealism in that time. You're going to achieve what you can achieve in that time. And so there's a real conversation about stylizing things. So we're not necessarily trying to match that chair exactly to that floor or that wall exactly to that other couch, but it's okay. It's acceptable. It's interesting. It's styled in a good way. Another sort of fun thing is it's the first time we've had a mariachi band on stage, which is really fun. So as they sort of, and again, the scene in this one showing again our Unreal template or parts of it. The content team has to think about where the camera can be and what is physically possible on our current stage setup, which is the design you can see there. I think there's only a couple more of these, but another one to talk about is the song called Hasta los Dientes, and going back to a more classic sort of 70s look with the light up floor and stuff like that. It shows off a little bit of the benefit of having that LED floor. Again, is like doing that on a physical stage might actually be really challenging all of a sudden, and it's very convenient that you just have pixels underneath you. You can choose to do all these things. For this shoot, actually, we didn't have interactivity for this by choice, but you could track people, and like as they step on it, you could do the Billie Jean thing if you wanted to. Um, and if you play the flight through, again, another scene here, but this one's a good example of very stylized, definitely not photoreal. But there's animations on this one, and there's musicality built in, so you can't tell now. But as it's playing with the music, the light changing and the beat mapping happens on the stage, which is something that is interesting for a musical performance. You do have to add another layer to this sometimes versus just a narrative piece. There was an interesting challenge as well on this. Again, looking at this 916 part of this, is framing is really difficult, but for some moments it actually was really helpful. And using this technology with virtual set extension and a floor allowed framing to be really easy. Our LED wall is about 20 feet tall, which is pretty big, but when you start turning the camera sideways, you lose headspace in a really interesting way. So being able to just virtually extend fully upwards is really helpful. This is a scene that's showing a bit of a physical relationship and a virtual one. So the walls next to her are real, the floor is not, and then everything behind her is also not, and the ceiling above her is also not real. There's no real ceiling there. So trying to again figure out what to piece together, what to use AR for, what to use sort of on the actual LED for is a really interesting challenge. And again, the point of this one also, she wanted it to feel like a Latina Alice in Wonderland, essentially was like her main sort of point. So in between each song, she would go back to this hallway and it would do all these fun sort of stylized tricks, which is really interesting. There's one other sort of magic trick that was really fun to talk about on this one. And one of the reasons why we use something like Disguise is that we're actually able to composite a lot of different things together inside a Disguise. So End Display is essentially running inside a Disguise with the wrapper on top of it. That's how that all works. But because it's in one sort of centralized location, we're able to sequence 2D content and other 3D content and other engines and other elements all happening at once. So this scene actually shows her in that other environment, which is all Unreal behind her. So we're in a giant Unreal environment. The front part of the floor fades off into virtual set extension. The above that second sort of sphere is not real. That's AR above Above that, below that, it's LED wall. The giant lips are a physical sculpture that someone created. And then behind the lips is actually another render engine called Notch, composited behind that on the LED wall. So she's able to walk through the physical object and then appear into a virtual tunnel behind her. So there's a lot going on with these shoots and a lot happening that needs to be triggered and sequenced live during a live shoot, which is a really interesting challenge. And then here's the sort of final image of it again with those lovely comments popping up through most of the screen. But it's an interesting challenge and it's an interesting thing to say, like, this is where people are consuming media. This is where, information is being shared. So why not find a way to tell a creative story with it? But definitely interesting. I think some key takeaways, some very interesting stats from TikTok's website. I think it's a little bit inflated, but it was a really successful live broadcast. They rebroadcasted it multiple times. It was something that was shown to their team and to her team as an alternate way of sharing new music with fans and sharing new music with the world that wasn't just the music videos that she had created. She was already doing live shows also on tour. She's doing live music performances. She specifically wanted another sort of avenue. And I think that's the interesting thing when we talk about live events and all the stuff that's happening post COVID is that this is a solution that wasn't a COVID solution. It was just something that was, needed to go on people's phones. And I think that's what's been really interesting about this is that this is just a whole new stream of things. The event itself was sponsored by Revlon, and halfway through, she was able to, sneak in a little, mascara commercial, like in one of the songs. And then while she's on stage, she was able to take a bunch of, Instagram selfies and boomerangs and other cool kid stuff that I don't know about, and like use that for her whole campaign. And so that's what the interesting part about this technology is that it just allows all these different things to happen. I think the last thing to talk about that shoot from a technical standpoint is that we don't really talk about it that much anymore because we're used to it, but we have to keep reminding ourselves that it's quite complicated and quite complex. But all of this is being done with multiple cameras and multi-camera switching in a broadcast ecosystem. So on our stage, we use a thing called Ghost Frame that some of you might have heard about to do multiple frustrums at once. But we're doing that while also switching, 5 to 7 cameras or whatever it is. So when you look on screen, a lot of you who are familiar in camera VFX, you'll see the frustum moving around, but there'll be a lot of frustums moving around, or you're switching for different cameras. You have to plan for the wide shot. It's a pretty complex broadcast ecosystem, and I think that's really interesting, especially when you look at using it with Disguise, is that it's what allows it to then transform to back into the real world, or keep on adding another layer on top of it, which is important for live in general.
Yeah, and as JD says, it's like Unreal's running inside Disguise, and then Disguise is accessing the RXs and the VXs to sort of scale up to this and be able to handle multiple frames, ghost frames, and the volume size as well is a sort of the challenge. And the other reason why we do it is because the sequencer and the way Disguise and design is kind of built is that it's been built over 15 years to sequence the most complex of kind of live music or live experiences and live events, and it's it's bulletproof. It's sort of well known, and it just is absolutely kind of designed to handle these incredible live moments and these incredible complex live moments. And it works really, really well, incredibly well with Unreal, and we've enjoyed a hugely successful partnership, with them and integrating that software through a bit of a software called RenderStream that, is proprietary to Disguise. So that's kind of, where things are kind of at right as of now, and the challenges in 9x16 and all of those, just the volume of stuff. I think as JT says as well, just getting that amount in was kind of amazing. It was great at the Pixamondo talk though as well, hearing about how they shot a 12-minute scene in 2 days, which is kind of unheard of on that kind of level of production. And this is the sort of connective tissue here, which is these technologies from these different industries converging are kind of what's allowing this to happen. You'd have never done 12 minutes in 2 days of that sort of complexity, before without some of this technology. And as you probably heard from lots of different people, they're from these different backgrounds, and they're bringing all of these disciplines and specialisms together to kind of push forward and push at this kind of frontier. So really just quickly to close out, it's just like, well, what's next? Lots more productions like that, but also the M word, which actually I haven't heard so much this week, which is kind of cool. But the VMAs were so interested in it, they made a new category, and that featured all the kind of big concerts in the metaverse, or Fortnite concerts and other concerts like that that's been happening. So this is sort of a big area of interest, and actually it's one of the first use cases for what could be known as the metaverse, is like live experiences, live entertainment. When everyone says like, what's the point of it? Well, actually, it's people in these massive online, open, pervasive worlds want entertainment, and so that's kind of why we're seeing lots of these experiences happening. You want to be in a game environment. They're now new social networks. There's millions and millions of young, engaged audiences within these, and they want to be entertained and they want to do cool stuff. And this is a still from Yuga Labs and Improbable's new platform, Other Side, which hasn't launched yet. But again, what's going to be the entertainment? What is the experience? What kind of people do in these worlds when they're kind of hanging out and socializing? And the possibilities are really neat. But the nice thing is we're not going to digitize or AI performers quite yet. They want to be entertained, by their biggest stars and by their sort of, most exciting people, from Camila Cabello to Ariana Grande and beyond. And so we want to bring those live experiences. This was a pre-canned experience, which is pretty much the norm at the moment. But how do we push in and actually bring genuine live experiences, which is really hard right now? It's hard enough to do it out to TikTok, let alone to kind of, emerging new platforms like Fortnite and others that are, springing up. But they want them. This was a still from an amazing gig. It was Riot Games and Pentakill on the Wave XR platform in UE. And the level of quality was incredible and so detailed. And people are wanting to sort of see and be engaged with their biggest characters. And this is a nice one from partners of ours called Zone. This is the Notorious B.I.G. metaverse, the Brook, which hasn't launched yet. But the nice thing about this as well, because a lot of things it's like, well, why just create a digital twin of reality? Well, this is about going back in time to the 1980s when, this is where he hung out and where he made his music. And that's a cool reason. Let's not do tech for tech's sake. That's a really neat reason to like, okay, that's time travel. That's being able to experience and go into something that you can't do. That's really, really nice. But good news, they also want to be in the real world too. We want to be in the real world as well. And like people are flocking back. There's an Ed Sheeran concert that was running on our system, an amazing creative direction as well and experience. People want this, but they also want, they want to augment it. They want to add layers to it. Snap are doing incredible stuff in this space as well. So they want all these different sort of layers of experience. So like, well, what is the answer? And it's kind of, it's probably looking like hybrid. It's like we know through COVID, like we can now access millions of people, which you can never do in a stadium or in a gig or in a VIP concert. But we don't just want to go fully virtual. We want to have the live, visceral, exciting, sometimes, mistakes and just like the sort of reality, humanity to it. So how do we do these things? And this is where it gets tough. This was a nice gig that Bastille did with WPP and Hogarth, looking at this. But obviously, it's quite kind of, flat screens and importing it in because that's what's possible right now. But what we're really interested in is kind of mocap, and it's great hanging out with the Move AI guys yesterday with Matthew Ball and seeing Matthew doing some press ups, which was super cool on their platform because that's getting into a point where, we're not going to have to be so rigged up and we're not going to be so constrained, and the artists are going to feel more free to do these performances that they would do normally to their fans in the real audience, but then that can be transported to a virtual platform or a virtual experience in 3D, which is where more people are going to be, at. But they're also going to be on TikTok. They're also going to be in YouTube. They're also going to be in Twitch. So it's like, how do we do that kind of multi-broadcast moment? And a bit of it is the crunchy kind of underpinning of all this, which is like standards and working out and working with. And we're part of this with some, amazing names, and Epic are obviously in this as well. And really working out things like, interoperable 3D formats. We're talking a lot about USD, but more than that, timings, pipelines. You'll have heard, SIMT 2110, things like that. It's like, what are these new standards? Because that's how, mass adoption kind of happens and more amazing experiences. And just a sort of diagram, this is kind of where we're, it's not quite there yet, or this is happening in pockets, but where we sort of want to go together is like, how do we kind of do these multiple broadcasts or experiential moments which are driven by live? We strongly believe in it. It's kind of our heritage and it's our backstory. And likewise with XR Studios, it's like live's really tough. It's really, really hard. But getting that point right and then going into the virtual feels like the right way. We'd say it's probably harder going the other way, and that's what's really exciting because still, these nascent emerging platforms have a lot of people, but there are even more people on traditional flat media for now and for the foreseeable future. So we're kind of really pushing it
I
there.
think that's part of it is like finding a way to make something we really enjoy at XR that we're shooting in 2D at the moment. It's very nice because it's a ubiquitous platform. We can ship that image, that final image to your phone or to a live stream or a broadcast or wherever. But we obviously want to be in other platforms as well, and so we've been watching the growth into VR. Our VR experiences, we're having some fun adventures over there at the moment. We're seeing, with AR and wearables and all the fun tag words that everyone's talking about. But as of now, it's really nice that when we shoot something, we're around something, we know that it can be seen, and that's really important. And when you watch the growth of an entire industry, is making sure that there's steps there, and that's the step we're at now. And maybe it'll be all holograms and volumetric everything at some point. But where we are now, it's a great sort of middle ground.